Dave Anderson here with the Fisherman magazine, and on this week's web fishing forecast, we have slot stripers making it all the way to the Outer Cape. We have bluefish showing up in Rhode Island, Mass, and Connecticut. We have lots of bait setting the table for what's to come. Mackerel, squid, bunker, they're everywhere. We have schoolie stripers making it all the way up to Gloucester, Mass. And we have togging really coming alive in Rhode Island. Stay tuned for all that.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
All right, starting in Massachusetts, the big news is bluefish have entered Buzzards Bay. I haven't heard about too many bluefish that have made their way all the way up like to the canal or something like that, but in the extreme western parts of Buzzards Bay, there are bluefish, and they're actually pretty big. The schoolie advancement has now made it through the canal, around the Cape, through Boston, and I've actually heard the first reports of fish up on the north shore of Mass at this point. The Cape is loaded with schoolies right now. There's lots of schoolies in all the tidal rivers along many of the beaches, especially on the Upper Cape. And the guys fishing some of these tidal estuaries at night are getting some slot fish, 30 to 35 inch fish. I haven't heard of anything over that, but guys throwing SP minnows and things like that are getting some better fish. And then in the canal, it's been a schoolie fest. In the afternoons, we're seeing a lot of fish at the herring run. Guys are getting them on a variety of smaller lures, small swing plugs, things like that. Haven't heard of a keeper inside the canal yet, but down the west end, I did hear of one 31-inch fish from Canal Bait and Tackle this week. I'm sure that's just the beginning of a robust season to come. I talked to Red from Red Top as usual, and I'm just going to do what I always do and read his report word for word. He said striper season is slowly kicking into gear here in Canal Land. Reports of small schoolies being caught intermittently in the canal. It's been a slow pick so far, but it should be picking up really soon. In years past, May 10th to the 18th has been the epicenter for when teen-sized bass start showing up in the canal, with the occasional 20-pounder mixed in. If you can't wait that long, the schoolie action in Upper Buzzards Bay has really been gaining steam. Some of the staff from the shop have been taking advantage of the late afternoon tides and getting after it. Storm search baits have been their weapon of choice. Tog season is also getting better. Seems like more fish have pushed in, though most are on the smaller side. That's good news for the boat crowd, though. With this wind and weather that we've been dealing with this week, it's going to have to switch over at some point, and hopefully by then the big tog will have made their way into the bay. He also said that the squid boats have been reporting more squid on the outside, and there's been a lot of big squid. So guys going out in boats have been looking for squid, have been loading up. A lot of guys have been vacuum sealing them and stuff like that in preparation for offshore fishing later this year. But the squid also means great things for the striper fishing and the fluke fishing and all that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this video. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of squid moving into Massachusetts waters right now. And it's funny how when all these saltwater fish show up on the Cape, how the focus shifts so quickly away from the freshwater. But the few reports I've heard about bass and trout on the Cape have been good. And I've been hearing some really good stuff from Quabbin and Wachusett as well. Lake trout and smallmouth bass, it's kind of high time for all that. I got a great picture of Fred Putnam. I think he's 5. Really cute kid with his first lake trout. I guess he worked pretty hard to catch that. And I got some other pics of these kids coming up in other issues that I'm saving for a cover. So keep your eyes open for that. James sent me in a report as well. I'm going to do the usual and just read it. And if you don't know, James is a North Shore guy. He fishes for a lot of different species, but he's a hardcore surf guy. So here's what he says. He says, tough weather and high water has not cooled the shad bite. He said, all you got to do is lengthen your leader and just keep in mind that chartreuse is the only color you should be using right now. As for stripers, he said he's personally witnessed one fish caught by his buddy Aaron. It was a solid 18 to 20 inch range fish. It was north of Gloucester, and it was not a holdover. But that's all he wants to say because he didn't want to sacrifice any sensitive information. He says if you get out there and put your time in and fish hard, you will be rewarded. He said the fish were breaking all over the surface, and the fish was caught on a small, soft plastic. It was a zoom fluke in the watermelon color on a 3/8 ounce jig head. Now we've also got tog action that's lighting up in Buzzards Bay. We didn't get a lot of reports, just I think because of the weather, just wild winds and anything out of the east or northeast really kicks up Buzzards Bay, and a lot of guys don't go out there. A friend of mine did go out yesterday. He said it was tough, but they did manage some fish, and he said he even got some fish on the jig. He said it was pretty difficult to get him on the jig, but just because of the waves and the wind. But I said the bite was good, but nothing real big. But they did fill their limit. And you can see here, just kind of as an example, I've got father and son, Bert and Bert Hall, with a really nice couple of blackfish there. And I mean, things in Mass Rhode Island are only just beginning, so we're going to see a lot more of that going forward through the rest of this month and beyond. Moving over into Rhode, we're seeing that major influx of squid there as well. And we're seeing some better bass following these squid up into the bay. Newport has had a lot of squid at the Goat Island Bridge and some of the surrounding areas too. I'm sure Secaunet has them. I'm sure they're over at Jamestown and Point Judith as well. But I've been getting some good pics from Woozy Fishing. You can see here a solid fish that they got up in the bay. Most of the action has been up in the bay for bass. There are guys getting them on the beaches and out front, but it seems like this better fish have been up in the bay this week anyway. Nighttime has been producing some better fish for the guys throwing SP minnows and things like that. It's getting to be that time of year when, you know, if you're getting 24-inch fish in the daytime, you might get a 30-inch fish at night. But the guys fishing in the daytime have been doing well on smaller spooks like a Missouri Hydro Pencil or poppers like a floating Super Strike popper. Those have been really crushing it. The herring color has been especially good. And the other thing that's been working really well are small glide baits. A commercially available version would be something like the smaller stick shad would be a good example. But things that are, you know, 4 inches long. And for whatever reason, it's just been a great season for those, for that bait so far. Woozy sent me this other pic with Coral Eye Yellow and another person. Just sort of indicative of the average fish that you're seeing up there. They're, you know, small to medium schoolies, but the action's been good and there's been a lot of them around. It's not time to throw the dock around just yet, but the bunker have been showing up. And it might be time to start changing the hooks on your bigger plugs, because I think, you know, within the next week to 10 days, we should definitely see some big fish. And I'm really looking forward to that. I talked to my buddy Rob Taylor from Newport Sport Fishing Charters, and he said that the tog bite has been really turning on. He said it's spread out of the bay now. You can get fish up in the bay. You can get fish out front. There's a lot of solid fish around. You know, fish up into like the 6-pound range or so. He hasn't seen anything really big just yet. I did get news of a 10-pounder taken from shore, but this guy must have been in the witness protection program or something, because he wouldn't even allow the tackle shop to take a photo of him. But that does give you a little bit of an idea that there are some tog in the shallows. But most of what I've been hearing are fish more out in like the 30-foot range, you know, give or take 10 feet from there. But that's where they are mostly at the moment. And windy days, again, have been an issue for toggers. I mean, it's put a lot of guys off the jig bite just because it's so difficult to hold bottom with the lighter jig and the lighter rod. So most guys are favoring rigs, and the bite's been decent. It's just been difficult to deal with the drift and the wind. And then fluke reports, they're really kind of only just starting to trickle in Rhode Island. The only thing I've heard, actually, and you probably can attribute this to the weather as well, I haven't heard anything from Block Island or anything like that. I don't doubt that somebody has caught some out there. I just haven't heard that myself. But the only thing I have heard is that there's been some fish, small fluke taken on the beaches down in South County. That's about the long and the short of that. Now I'm going to throw it over to Mike from Watch Hill Outfitters, and we're going to let him tell us a little bit more about what's happening in South County and out toward Watch Hill. Take it away, Mike.
We're doing a little bit of bass fishing out front. From what I hear, most of those fish are on squid. I've also heard about some very large bluefish coming into the area. So you want to make sure that your leaders are a little bit tight, a little bit heavy for the big blues. Up and down the Pawcatuck, we're also seeing some small bass, mainly schoolies, the typical baits. You've got your small swimmers, a little bit of small popper. We really like that hoagie lure with the rattle in it. I like that a lot. Really catches well. And then we've also got some herring that are running through there. So if you want to change up your baits a little bit, you might want to look at the Lunker City line and the little finesse fish, the owlwife. I love that bait, just unweighted or weighted, either one, casting and just kind of pulling it along the bottom. Very effective. This time of year, you never know what you're going to get. We seem like we're beginning the season, but depends on temperature. So right now we're about 47 to 49 degrees. So we're just beginning the school run. Tight lines and hope you have fun.
And then last but not least, we're just going to touch on some freshwater fishing in Rhode Island. I haven't heard a lot about trout again this week. Most of the guys that I talked to that are freshwater fishing are fishing for largemouth. Robbie took one day off from chartering, got a really nice fish at an undisclosed pond, looked like about a 5-pounder. And then I got this really nice photo from Alana Gale from an inland pond in Rhode Island. And it's just nice to see those young anglers getting out there and getting a solid fish. Thanks for the pick, Alana. And moving over into Connecticut, we've had bluefish in Connecticut as well. The only ones I've heard about have been Mid-Sound and then more action out way west. Still hasn't been like a crazy amount of bluefish action, but there are some there. Striped bass are everywhere in Connecticut now. Over by the Thames and in that area, the fish seem to be smaller. And then the further west you go, they just seem to get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. I talked to Mike Roy. He's been fishing the mouth of the Connecticut River. He said the bite's been a little tougher than it has been over the last few weeks, but there are plenty of fish there. He said that they've been topping out around 12 pounds. They haven't gotten anything really big yet. But he said a lot of these fish have just been stuffed with bunker. Check out this picture that he sent me here. I mean, that's a small fish. It just choked down a bunker. Still was hungry enough to try to take down that sluggo that he threw at it. And then if you head west from there, it seems like every river mouth, estuary mouth, they all seem to have fish. I'm sure there's some smaller fish on the reefs in that area as well. I know the lower Housatonic has been good. I know Norwalk Harbor area has been good. We're going to get into that a little bit more with Max. At the end of this, fluking is open, but it seems to be a New York game. In fact, the only picture that I was able to find was this one that came from the Shinnecock Star, and this was caught in the Peconics, and that seems to be where the action is, from the Peconics around and then out onto the south side of Long Island. They just haven't made their way into Long Island Sound yet, at least not in any kind of crazy numbers. But with all these squid around, the bite is sure to light up soon. And I know there's been a lot of squid in the Peconic area, and as those fish move east, you're going to see places like Isabella lighting up. You're going to see the beaches off of Rhode Island lighting up even more. So this is really just the beginning of the squid bite, and things should only get better from here. To wrap up that, I'm just going to throw it over to Max from Fisherman's World. He's going to give us a little closer look at what's going on in the Western Sound.
The striped bass fishing is remaining really good in our area right now. And we've actually had a bunch of alewives show up on our local tidal rivers this week. Guys have been cashing on some nice slot fish way up into our rivers. And around the islands and our mud flats, the fishing remains really consistent. Guys throwing SPs, small paddle tails, sluggos, and smaller spooks are all working well. There are some fish starting to get taken out in the triangle area like 11B, the OB buoy, and 28C. To our west, the fishing is really starting to heat up, and it should only get better leading into May and all the way to June. Guys trolling umbrella rigs, bunker spoons, deep diver plugs, and mojos are all cashing on some nice fish. There hasn't been any fish really big yet, but there's been a consistent bite of like teen size to 25 to 30 pound fish. Guys chunking at night are saying that the action's really starting to pick up. Fluke fishing opens this week, and guys should remain shallow for the most part, drifting bucktails with gulp, or tips with squid, spearing, and I would try places behind the islands, sandy beaches off Southport and Westport, and guys want to shoot across, I would fish the golf course area, Smithtown Bay, and Port Jeff. Here's some local pictures of our local anglers on some stripers.
And just to wrap things up in Connecticut, I have heard of some weak fish around, more centrally located in the state. My guess is West Haven Sandbar. No one was really giving up any locations. But I am seeing, a few weak fish popping up here and there in Rhode Island again, and I think even a few in Mass. This just seems like it's going to be a special year. Talking to the guys that are fishing Long Island, it's been phenomenal out there. I've heard of some really good catches of weak fish out there. Guys that have been doing it a long time said they haven't seen fishing like that for weak fish since the 70s. So that's kind of exciting. And then inland fishing in Connecticut, the trout bite, still red hot. Any one of these rivers or streams or lakes or ponds or whatever that's been stocked, the state just seems to be dumping more and more trout in, and the bite has just been phenomenal. Haven't heard a single complaint. Hats off to them again. It's just been a phenomenal year for anybody who likes to freshwater fish in Connecticut. And just to sort of wrap things up, I'm going to talk a little bit about this influx of bait that we're seeing and what that means for popular fisheries throughout the rest of this month. The big one is definitely squid. We're seeing a lot of squid in New York waters, seeing some squid in Connecticut, good numbers in Rhode Island, good numbers in Mass. And I'm not like a crazy fluke fisherman, but the guys that I know that are, they all tell me in the springtime, if you want to find fluke, you got to find the squid first. And they're just looking on the fish finder and just looking for these amorphous clouds of squid that show up, and they're just kind of hovering over the bottom. You drop a bucktail down below those squid, and you're gonna find fluke. It's like an equation that always ends in the same answer. Being a bass fisherman, the squid excite me just as much, though. I mean, the squid means the topwater bite is happening, and the squid are the reason why the bluefish are here. So once those squid are here, the topwater bite lights up. Within the next week or so, I can see pencil poppers and the smaller dock, larger popping plugs, anything like that, any topwater plug, even fast fishing like a 9-inch sluggo on the surface. All of these methods are set off by the presence of a large amount of bait, a competitive bite. And that's what happens. These fish show up here. The stripers come up here, and they've made this long journey. They get on a big pile of bait like that, and they just get super competitive. And that's when fishing is the most fun. That's visual, daytime stuff. You're throwing large plugs or splashy stuff that you can see on the surface. Every hit is a spectacle. And you really have a good shot at getting a really big fish, especially when you factor in that there are tons of bunker around. And we're hearing a lot about mackerel, too. I've been hearing about mackerel at Block Island. I've been hearing about mackerel at the Vineyard. I've been hearing about mackerel outside the canal. So we've got a lot of bait in place. The table is set. There's a lot of solid fish heading our way. And I mean, these bluefish got here so fast. I just have to believe that the big bass are going to get here fast, too. This is just another week that you can't waste. You got to get out there. You can't catch them from the couch, my friends. You just got to get out there. And whatever your species of choice, you just got to put your time in. This is a great week to be out there. You got to love springtime. We don't get another springtime. There's no other time like it. So good luck this week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.